I was never athletic. Someone told me a long time ago that I was lazy. Not lazy like sit on the couch watching TV type lazy. Lazy like you are not the athletic one. Your brother's the athletic one. You are the smart one. And I believed them. I believed that for so long that I stopped trying. I chose music instead of soccer. I chose the back of the class instead of the front row. I chose being invisible. I am 52 years old now. I deadlift 300 pounds, I do unassisted pull-ups, and I started from zero or even below zero if there's a place. Not from a little behind, right? From I was told you run funny, you have no coordination, and athletics just are not for you. This video is for the woman who was told the same thing. Here's the myth that some women are athletic and some women just are not. That athleticism is a trait you are born with or you're just not. That if you missed it in childhood, you missed it completely. And that's not biology, that is simply a story, a narrative. And the problem with stories is that when you hear them early enough, they become your identity. And identity becomes behavior, and behavior then becomes reality. You didn't miss the athletic window. You were simply handed a label, and you did what smart women do. You found somewhere else maybe that you excel, but your body, it was never the problem. The story, the narrative was the problem. My dad actually thought I had skills. He saw me play soccer with my brother, and he said so. He said, oh, you've got skills. But my mother said I couldn't be a jack of all trades. I had to pick something. She meant it practically, and I understand that. I know where she was coming from. But what I heard as a kid was choose. And I wasn't brave enough to choose something athletic. Okay, I had a lot of social anxiety when I was young. Being in group settings was so overwhelming for me. I was not comfortable and I shrunk, okay? So I shrunk away from situations like that. And being told that you run funny, I mean, that's not a great motivator. If you've ever been told stuff like that, you know what it does to you. It doesn't just embarrass you once. It follows you, it sticks with you, and it becomes the reason you don't try. Why bother when the conclusion is already written, right? I run funny. So I became the smart one. I played the flute, I was excellent at it, and I stayed away from anything that would expose what I believed about my body. I wasn't lazy, I was simply protecting myself, and that's what nervous systems do. When shame is attached to failure, okay, they avoid the arena completely. So I remember when I was 25 years old, I'm 52 now, and I own a gym. Isn't that ironic, right? But I was 25 years old, and I remember sitting at a beach, and I was looking at this girl, and I was like, gosh, her legs look so different than mine. And I looked down at my legs, and they were kind of just fluffy, right? Kind of shapeless and kind of fluffy. And I had a conscious thought at that moment. I was like, well, I'm not growing taller because I'm 25 now, I'm not 12, right? I'm only gonna go one direction, right? And I better start doing something about this because I was really a very sedentary person at that age. I was not healthy. And it wasn't vanity. It was just the first time I realized, wait a minute, this is not working, right? This is not working for me. And if nothing changes, right, I just need to do something about this. And that was the moment that shame became information. And I used it, okay? That next week, I joined a gym. And I remember I was so uncomfortable that I could barely make myself go. Remember, I had social anxiety. I hid in the back of the step aerobics class, not in the middle, in the way back in the corner where if I made a mistake, maybe no one would notice. I used to look at the other women in the front of that class and think, I am never going to be like them because I just felt so unable. So I want to pause here because those women at the front of the class with the confidence and the coordination and the bodies that looked like they belong there, okay, they were looking at me the way I was looking at them. I know that now because I am that woman today, and I see the woman in the back of the room, okay? I recognize exactly what that woman is going through and what's happening in her head. And I remember also too, years ago when I was in my house, and I remember practicing those Buns of Steel videos, right? With Tammy Lee, whatever, I can't even remember her name. But I was practicing Buns of Steel videos in my house, right? And I remember my legs, they were on fire. And I was looking at her in the video, I'm like, how does she keep going like that? Like she just keeps going. And my legs were burning from the buildup of lactic acid. And I just couldn't believe how weak I was. And I also remember, this was way before we had phones and apps, I used to print out workouts from bodybuilding.com, and I would put them in this big binder, and I would bring this big binder to the gym, and I would read step by step on how to do the exercise before I touched a single weight. That is not lazy behavior. That is a woman who couldn't afford to look like she didn't know what she was doing. Like, I needed to be well informed. That is a nervous system doing everything it can to stay safe in an unfamiliar territory. I didn't recognize it back then, but I do now. Okay, but then came a car accident when I was 28. Chronic neck pain, muscle spasms, constant crunching in my neck when I would turn my head. I used to have to go for lidocaine injections and Flexeril, muscle relaxers and acupuncture and chiropractors. But I began to notice something, that when I really moved in the right way, the pain got better. Not always, not consistently, not predictably, right? But it was enough to notice, okay? And then I began to realize that, like, oh, if I do this thing with my shoulder blade and I lower my shoulder blade, right, my neck doesn't hurt as much. And I realized that, like, if I move my shoulder blades in this position, my neck doesn't hurt much, right? And I started to develop this skill. That is actually a skill most people never develop, and it's called interoception, the ability to sense what is happening inside your body. I had accidentally trained this skill through years of precise, detailed muscle control from being a musician, okay? The thing I learned back then as a musician wasn't necessarily athletic, but it taught me how to pay attention to the inside of my body enough to learn how to lift. My point is your history is not wasted. You likely have transferable skills that you can apply to this situation, and they show up again in ways you have never expected. When I point this out to clients, that their skills, that they have them, they just need to learn how to transfer them to this situation. So here's what I want you to understand. What kept me out of the gym wasn't laziness. It was a nervous system that had learned athletic contexts are dangerous, okay? Or that you will be evaluated, or you will be found lacking, or that you will be embarrassed. I mean, remember dodgeball, okay? That is a threat response, not a character flaw. And when I finally started lifting, and I mean really lifting seriously, that was in my 30s, not just cardio, but something started to shift, not just in my body, but in my nervous system. Every time I picked up something heavier than I thought I could, okay, my brain updated its file on me, and it said, she can actually do hard things. Okay, that update doesn't just live in the gym. It carries into how you walk into a room, into how you handle a hard conversation, into how you see yourself in the mirror. Okay, strength training is a nervous system regulation tool, not just for body composition. That's what no one told me. That's what I wish someone would have told me when I was 25. I am so surprised that, considering my childhood identity, that today I own a gym. Okay, I've owned a gym for over 12 years, and I teach people how to lift. And it all started 20 years ago. Okay, I think, yeah, 20 years ago. I worked at a local YMCA, and I would work out there all the time. Okay, I didn't work there as an employee. I worked out there all the time. And I would put my daughter, she was a baby then, in daycare, and I was going through a very unfortunate divorce at the time, and I didn't know where life was gonna go. And the wellness director came up to me and he asked me, he says, hey, are you a personal trainer? Because we're looking to hire a female personal trainer. I was shocked, right? Somebody thought I was like actually a professional or something at this, right? So I was like, no, I'm not a personal trainer. And that's when I went back to school. You know, I got back and got my certification. And I started working there. And again, this was a long time ago, And that's how it started. But that changed for me. That was pivotal for me because it changed from someone who exercises to, wow, I am actually in a different place now. I have a whole different identity. And my identity before had fallen apart because I lost my career through this car accident. So I was kind of identity-less. And this was a very pivotal moment for me. It changed from just being someone who exercises to being someone who lifts. It didn't happen in a moment of inspiration, right? It happened during one of the hardest years of my life. I have never known change to happen when life is easy. Capacity isn't built when things are easy. It's built when you keep showing up anyway. So if you are watching this and you have never considered yourself athletic, okay, I want you to hear me on this. The label was never about your capacity. It was about somebody else's opinion or limited understanding of you or of who you were. You were not broken. You were misdirected, okay? The women I work with, okay, the ones that come here, they are convinced they can't do this, okay? They are not unfamiliar with hard work. They are unfamiliar with a body that feels safe to inhabit. And that is very different, and that is fixable. You don't start in the weight room, okay? You start building the capacity to even be there, to feel unfamiliar and stay anyway, to pick up something heavy and find out what you are actually made of, okay? Going through the hard parts. If you were just starting out or starting over, okay, I have a video on foundational exercises. I work on these with every single woman who comes here, not because they are easy, but because they are foundational, and they will tell you exactly what needs to be working and what your body needs and the attention it needs in order to make further progress. And that video is linked right here. And if something in this video landed for you, if you recognized yourself somewhere in this story, okay, please drop it in the comments. I read all the comments. Overall, you were never the problem. You were given a story that was too small for you, and it's time to expand. It's time to build something that proves that.